Just veering away ever so slightly from a light kids animated film, I'm going to talk about the movie Seven from 1995 by David Fincher. Now, for better or worse, this film sticks with you. I think everyone can agree on that. For those of you who haven't seen it, the premise is that a serial killer is basing all of their murders on the seven deadly sins. And I think sloth is the most horrific killing that takes place. Not just because of what you see on screen. It's basically a person who's been lying in bed for a year, and they've got all these bed sores all over them, and they're basically a shell of a human. But just imagining the work it took to torture this person over the course of that year, and thankfully we don't see that because it's horrifying enough. A great touch with the aesthetics of this film is David Fincher had all of the scenes that were filmed outdoors to be in the pouring rain, and just to hammer home how dank and depressing a place this city really is. And I think, considering how depressing they portray the city, it's a good thing that they never actually named what the city was, because the citizens of that city, I think, would have been taken aback. But with the rain, if you want to get sort of really deep into the symbolic nature of the film, maybe the rain symbolizes the city trying to wash away its dirt and grime, but it never succeeds. So, if you didn't think the film was already nihilistic enough, there you go. Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt are, again, phenomenal in this film. I like how they have different temperaments when it comes to conducting their police work. But if you put them together, you get great results. I think the best scene of the film is in the diner between Morgan Freeman and Gwyneth Paltrow, where she tells him that she's pregnant. She hasn't told her husband, and she's really conflicted about bringing a child into this horrible world. I think it's great because of the performances, but also because this child is like the only bit of hope in the film. It's a great motivator for the police to continue to try to clean up the city. But again, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the ending, it just makes it all the more tragic at the end of the film when, well, actually, I won't spoil the end of the film. If you haven't seen it, go out and see it. But you'll just know with what happens at the end of the film. It's really, really tragic that they were going to bring a child into this world. Now, with Kevin Spacey, for as hard as it can be to watch him in movies these days, knowing what we know, he's amazing in this film. When we see him in the flesh, finally, near the end of the film, for the most part, he's quite still, and he doesn't often raise his voice. And in that way, he's sort of portrays himself as quite insequential, like he's just a normal guy. But it's a great juxtaposition against the awful things that he's done and that we've seen throughout the course of the film. We've witnessed the aftermath of them throughout the film. So I just think that makes his performance all the creepier. It's similar to how Anthony Hopkins is very still in his performance of Hannibal Lecter, at least while he's in the jail cell. It was an interesting approach that the filmmakers made as well, to not have Kevin Spacey credited on the posters or in any of the promotional material of the film. So it was a surprise to audiences when he showed up at the end. They went so deep with this that there's a clip from the show Siskel and Ebert when they were reviewing the film back in '95, and it's a scene of Brad Pitt talking on the phone with who is ultimately Kevin Spacey, but the voice that they used for the character John Doe on the other end of the line actually belongs to another actor. So they really went to great lengths to hide the fact that Kevin Spacey was not in the film, and I'm not sure what audiences' reactions were when they saw Spacey in the film at the end, but I guess it was a big surprise. Now we get to the really good stuff. All right, we've got The Dark Knight up next. From 2008. This is an amazing film. There's not anything really that hasn't been said about just this masterpiece of a film, so I'll just basically give my thoughts on it. For a film that's 2.5 hours long, I don't think that there's any scene or line of dialogue that's wasted, really. Everything that happens or is said is in service to the plot or to fleshing out the characters and their motivations and whatnot. And I've come to appreciate the third act of the film more and more over the years, actually. The way that Batman navigates the Pruitt building to get to the top whilst along the way securing the hostages and neutralizing the terrorists. It's a really, really great sequence, and it goes along at a nice clip as well. The other part of the third act, the whole scene with the people and the criminals on the boats, I don't really like that part of the film. It's a bit of a struggle to watch every time, even to this day. I'm not sure if it's the dialogue, if it's the acting, or if the premise of the Joker trying to set each boat against each other is just a bit too complicated to sort of cram into that one little set piece that they have. I'm not sure, but I'm always glad to see the back of the film. But I mean, the film's not perfect, but still obviously one of my favorites. Now, Heath Ledger. What else can be said about this legendary performance? It's flawless, I think. And each time I watch the film, there's a new mannerism of his, or there's a new look, or like a twitch or something that I haven't noticed before, and it just makes me appreciate the performance even more. And it's just one of the greatest performances by a male actor, I think, of all time. Now, I think because his performance is so good and captivating and sort of out there, I think Aaron Eckhart and Christian Bale get overlooked a little bit in this film for how good they actually are. It's a great tragic tale, the whole film, of Harvey Dent. It's sort of his rise and fall. He's this optimistic and ambitious man wanting to do good in a corrupt system, but is ultimately broken by the Joker. Maybe because he tried to take on too much himself and he should have delegated a little bit more. I'm not sure, but there's also a great vulnerability and humanity that Bale brings to Bruce Wayne / Batman that hadn't really been portrayed before in a film, I think. So really, really good stuff. Alrighty, sticking with the Batman film, up next, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition. I don't think this would be a very popular pick, but hey, I love the film, so that's what this list is about. It's very tough for me to choose between this and The Dark Knight as to which is my favourite superhero film of all time. I just love them both so much, but they definitely scratch different itches. The Dark Knight is this sort of bare-boned, linear storytelling, and BVS is this bombastic display of filmmaking that just shoots for the stars, and for me at least, boy, does it get there. The performances are just perfect all round, I think. Even bit players like Diane Lane and Jeremy Irons are at the very top of their game and are perfect for the two titular heroes to have those moral dilemma conversations with, in very different ways, mind you. And other people like Lawrence Fishburne, Holly Hunter, Harry Lennox, Kevin Costner, they're also really, really great in their limited screen time. Now, what the Ultimate Edition brings to the film is a fleshing out of Lois Lane's investigation subplot, and it's really, really, really great to see. So she's investigating the attack at the start of the film that Superman ultimately intervened in, and it's great to see because Amy Adams does such a great job with the role. She portrays really well both Lois's determination to get to the bottom of what happened and who was behind it, but she also has really human moments where we see the emotional toll that these awful events have had on her. And speaking of portraying emotional toll, Henry Cavill does this in spades. I don't think in any Superman movie or TV show beforehand, at least one that I've seen, has there been such a focus on Superman weighing up how much he should get involved in world politics. And there are some really great, iconic shots of Superman in this film. Zack Snyder's eye for the Superman iconography is spot on, and he portrays him as this godlike figure in the montages, in the montages. But we also see his vulnerable moments as well, like the scene at the top of the mountain, speaking to his father, or the way that it's been interpreted is that it's him remembering a conversation that he had with his father, and also the scene at night in Kansas where he's speaking with his mother before he goes to the hearing at the Capitol. Now, Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne / Batman. This man, he threw all he had into this role, and he did an amazing job. He got buff as shit for this film, but I think the best part of his performance is the rage that he conveys, even while he's being really still. I think the scene the scene with Alfred. The scene in Alfred would be a very different scene. But the scene with Alfred in the mausoleum, right before he goes off to take on Superman, is really foreboding and ominous, and in a way really sad when he says that he's older now than his father ever was. Just great stuff. And I think this movie introduces Wonder Woman in a really interesting way as well. Gal Gadot is really good in this film. She kicks ass in the third act when she shows up to help the boys out. And she's really mysterious and regal, and there are these really cool hints to her backstory, which then get fleshed out the following year in Wonder Woman. She's really great. Perfect performance. Now, one last thing about this film. I'm going to address the elephant in the room, and that's the Martha scene, or the Martha moment. Obviously, I think it's a phenomenal scene. I don't think that's any surprise. I've not known anyone with PTSD in real life, but I can imagine that the way that Batman reacts to the name Martha being said is not too dissimilar to the way someone with PTSD would react if something did trigger them. Now, I admit that Batman does turn around pretty quickly to say to Superman that he will save Martha, and he's on Superman's side. But come on, man, he's the goddamn Batman. When there is a job to do that has to be done because it's the right thing to do, he focuses on it, and he just sees it no other way. Plus, that turnaround gives us the warehouse fight scene, and that's just undisputably the greatest Batman fight scene in any film to date. Okay, the last film I'm going to talk about, my clear number one favourite. I haven't ranked any of the other films that I've talked about because what's the point? It's pretty arbitrary, but my clear number one favourite film of all time is the Lord of the Rings Trilogy Extended Edition. Yes, I'm counting it as one long 11-hour film because I can. Now, I've watched this film so many times that even when I'm watching the commentary tracks from either the cast or the director and producer and writer, I know most of the time what they're going to talk about next, which is just an indication of how many times I've watched it. But I just love listening to them talk about making the film with the passion that they do. It's infectious. It came out when I was in my early to mid teenage years, so that's So it was a great time to capture my imagination, and the world that they created was so dense and full of life and full of detail. Every single department that worked on this film was at the very top of their game. It's quite amazing to see, actually. And watching the extensive behind the scenes documentaries on the Blu-rays just makes me appreciate the films even more. The film even more. I said films there, I know, but film even more. An example of this is the mithril vest that Bilbo gives Frodo in the Fellowship of the Ring. It was hand woven by these using some sort of metal. Pardon me. So it was hand woven by these two guys in New Zealand, and they worked on making this vest for so long, hand weaving it, that they actually rubbed off the fingertips, I think, on their thumb and forefingers, and maybe their middle fingers as well. I mean, you only see the vest, I think, on screen, I think, for about 1 minute out of this 11-hour epic. So just the dedication to every single detail in the film is, I think, unsurpassed, or with any other film that I've seen or that I can think of. And I don't have any complaints or nitpicks about this film. I genuinely think it is 100% perfect. I don't even mind the extensive ending that they had at the end of Return of the King, because, you know, they had to wrap up 11 hours of story, and they had to do it in an emotionally satisfying way, and they couldn't have done it just like that with a Thanos snap of the fingers. So I think it was warranted. Alrighty, so that's my discussion of my 10 favourite films of all time. Thanks very much for taking the time to watch this video. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and please leave a comment down below discussing what your favourite films are, and then we can have a fun little back and forth chat about it. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.